If you want to get pregnant as soon as possible, it is critical to have intercourse on your most fertile days each cycle. But when are those most fertile days? What if your cycle isn't regular? Or what if it's longer or shorter than normal? How can you figure out the best time to be intimate to maximize your chances of getting pregnant? There are lots of myths and misinformation out there, so if you want the actual science-backed answers around timing sex perfectly, then stick around. I'm Juliette Millar. I'm a trained natural fertility specialist with over 25 years experience, and welcome to Focus on Fertility, the YouTube channel dedicated to supporting you on your fertility journey with science-based tips and information you can trust to help you get pregnant as soon as possible. I've been wanting to make this video for a long time because there is so much incorrect information out there about how to time sex correctly. And getting it wrong can be the difference between conceiving quickly and easily or facing many months or even longer of frustration, heartache and delay. And just a side note, one of the biggest culprits is the use of fertility apps. That is a topic for another video, but in the meantime, please don't rely on your fertility app to tell you when you're most fertile. They can be very misleading. So, when should you be having intercourse each month to give you the best chance of getting pregnant? I really wish I could give you a quick and easy answer, but unfortunately it doesn't work that way because the days that you are most fertile depend entirely on two variables. Firstly, the day that you ovulate in a given month, and that varies from person to person and from cycle to cycle. And secondly, the type of cervical fluid you produce. So unfortunately, there's no generic answer that's right for everyone. Now that might all sound a bit complicated, but it's really not. And I'm going to break it all down for you in this video so you can stop all the guesswork and feel confident identifying your most fertile days. So firstly, we're going to do a quick review of the menstrual cycle, and don't skip this bit because it's important for the rest of the video. Then I'll explain how your fertile days relate to your menstrual cycle and your day of ovulation. Next, I'll share the two best ways, in my opinion, for finding those fertile days. And if you stick around till the end, I'm going to give you a simple calculation to figure out your personal fertile days, one that gives you a much more reliable estimate than a generic fertility app. Okay, let's jump in and start with a quick review of the menstrual cycle. Your menstrual cycle is the number of days between the start of one period and the start of your next period. So it's the time frame between your periods and not the length of your period, which is a really common misunderstanding. A menstrual cycle is counted in days, with day 1 being the first day of bleeding. Important point, if you experience any spotting before your period starts, this is not counted. Day 1 is the first day you experience proper red blood flow, where you need to use some form of sanitary protection. So once you start having actual flow, that is day 1, and then you start counting your cycle from that day onward. The last day of your cycle is the day before your next period starts. So if, for example, your next period starts on day 30, you've just had a 29-day cycle. Day 30 becomes your new day 1. So that is one menstrual cycle, the time frame from the first day of one period through to the day before the next one begins. Now, you've probably heard that a normal menstrual cycle is 28 days long. But research has found that in reality, only about 13% of cycles are actually 28 days long. Medically speaking, a normal cycle can range anywhere from 21 to 35 days in length. So as long as the number of days between your periods falls between that 21 to 35 day range, that is considered a normal cycle length. If your cycle length is consistently shorter than 21 days or longer than 35, that's a sign that something is off, usually some sort of hormone imbalance. So if that sounds like you, it's a good idea to speak with your doctor and get things checked out. Now, somewhere in your cycle, hopefully you'll ovulate. Ovulation, of course, is when a mature egg is released from one of your ovaries, ready to be fertilized by sperm. You'll notice that I haven't placed ovulation on any particular day of the cycle here. And that's because the day of ovulation can vary significantly from person to person and from cycle to cycle. More on that in just a moment. The first part of the menstrual cycle, from the start of your period up to the day of ovulation, is known as the follicular phase. This phase is when your body is preparing to ovulate, when an egg is growing and maturing inside one of your ovaries, getting ready to be released. One of the biggest fertility myths out there is that ovulation usually happens on day 14, but the science just doesn't back this up. The truth is, the day of ovulation can vary significantly from person to person and from cycle to cycle. In fact, a large study of over 600,000 menstrual cycles found that on average, ovulation actually occurs closer to day 17 of the cycle, not day 14. And other research has found that across the population, ovulation can occur as early as day 8 or as late as day 60, especially in people with irregular cycles or conditions like PCOS. So hopefully you can start to see why the timing of sex can get tricky. The second part of the menstrual cycle, from the day you ovulate up to the start of your next period, is known as the luteal phase. And it's during the luteal phase that your body prepares the lining of your uterus to receive a fertilized egg in case you've conceived that cycle. Now, you might have heard that the luteal phase is also usually 14 days long. And that's why you might have been told that to figure out when you ovulate, you just take the length of your menstrual cycle and subtract 14 days. If that were true, it would certainly make life a lot easier. But unfortunately, that advice is outdated, even though it's still commonly given even by health professionals. But again, it doesn't reflect the science. It's also one of the reasons fertility apps often get things wrong, because their predictions are built on the same flawed assumption. The truth is, across the population, a healthy luteal phase can actually be anywhere from 10 to 16 days long. And that same study I mentioned earlier found that the average luteal phase length is actually 12.4 days, not 14. Now, that 10 to 16 day variation might not sound like a big deal, but it can make a big difference when it comes to figuring out when you ovulate and when you're most fertile. Now, the next couple of points are crucial for figuring out your fertile days. Firstly, like I mentioned before, the follicular phase, that first part of your cycle, is variable. That means the day you ovulate can change from cycle to cycle. For example, you might ovulate on day 16 one cycle and then on day 20 the next. Even if you have perfect regular cycles, you can still sometimes ovulate earlier or later than usual just because of natural variation or things like stress or getting sick. And if you have a hormone imbalance or a condition like PCOS, the day you ovulate might vary even more dramatically. So you can't always accurately predict in advance the day that you're going to ovulate. The second important point is that unlike the follicular phase, which is variable in length, the luteal phase is usually consistent for each individual person. Now, I know I said before that the luteal phase can be anywhere from 10 to 16 days long, but that's across the population. Within one individual person, it typically stays the same each cycle. So if your luteal phase is 12 days long, for example, then you'll typically always have 12 days between ovulation day and your next period. And if your luteal phase is 16 days long, you'll consistently have 16 days between ovulation day and your next period, give or take a day or so. And this is why the length of your cycle depends almost entirely on the day that you ovulate. If you ovulate early, your cycle will be shorter. And if you ovulate later, your cycle will be longer because your luteal phase is always the same length. And hopefully you can see what I mean with this example of a 12-day luteal phase. Okay, with that as background then, when are you most fertile? When should you be having intercourse to maximize your chances of getting pregnant? The days that intercourse can result in pregnancy are called your fertile window, and research has clearly shown that the fertile window is a maximum of 6 days long, made up of the 5 days before ovulation day plus the day of ovulation itself. If you have sex before or after this fertile window, it will not result in pregnancy. There is zero chance, no matter how often you try. And if you miss your fertile window completely some months, please know that this is really common. In-laws come and stay, partners travel out of town, one of you gets sick. Life has a habit of getting in the way, right? It's not always easy. Just try and have fun for the rest of your cycle and know that you can always try again next month. That 6-day fertile window is based on the combined survival times of the sperm and the egg. I won't go into all the biology here, but if you want a deeper dive, I break it down step by step in my How to Get Pregnant Faster masterclass, which I'll link to below in case you're interested. Now, 3 really important things to know. Number 1, that 6-day fertile window is the maximum length. In reality, it's often much shorter. In fact, for many couples, the fertile window is just 2 to 3 days long, and sometimes it can even be as short as just 1 day or less. Number 2, ovulation day is actually your last day of fertility. The egg only lives for up to 24 hours. If it's not fertilized in that time, it just breaks down and gets reabsorbed by your body. After that, you are no longer fertile, no longer able to get pregnant for the rest of that cycle. And number 3, something that might surprise you, ovulation day is not your most fertile day. Several studies have shown that your highest chance of conception is actually during the 2 to 3 days before ovulation, not on ovulation day itself. What that means then is that you want to start having intercourse in the days before ovulation, before your egg is released. If you wait until the day of ovulation itself, you could actually be lowering your chance of getting pregnant. So, in a nutshell, the best time to have sex to maximize your chances of conceiving is usually the 2 to 3 days before ovulation day. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, well, hang on a minute, Juliette. If my follicular phase is variable and I can't know for sure when I'm going to ovulate, how am I supposed to know when my fertile days are? How will I know when those 2 to 3 days are before ovulation? The good news is you can figure it out. And that brings me to the 2 best ways to identify your fertile days. But first, just a quick reminder, as I mentioned before, please do not rely on your fertility app to tell you when you're fertile. If you're using a genuine fertility awareness-based app, and ideally if you've also had some tuition in fertility awareness, that's okay. But most other fertility apps tend to be very unreliable. So, the first method you can use to identify your fertile days is at-home ovulation tests or a digital fertility monitor or device. But there's a caveat. Ideally, you want to use a test or device that measures both luteinizing hormone and estrogen. And in case you're wondering, those little paper test strips that you dip into your urine only measure luteinizing hormone or LH. The reason I recommend using tests that also measure estrogen is because they give you an earlier, more advanced warning of ovulation, meaning more fertile days leading up to ovulation day. The problem with LH-only tests is they usually turn positive towards the end of your fertile window, right before ovulation. And at that point, some or even all of your most fertile days may have already passed. So it's better to get that earlier warning with estrogen levels. And I've made a couple of videos on this, how to read your OPK the right way and when to have sex compared to a positive result. And I'll link to those videos in the description below. But what if these tests are too expensive, or you don't like all the plastic, or you just find them too confusing or stressful? Well, guess what? Your own body gives you some very clear signs of when you're fertile and when you're about to ovulate. And the best part is that these natural signs of fertility are backed by solid science. Nearly all women experience them, they're easy to recognize, and they cost absolutely nothing. So, what are these signs? 2 of the easiest fertility signs to use that tell you in real time when you're most fertile are your cervical fluid and your vulval sensation. Cervical fluid is the mucus-like substance you might notice on your underwear or when you wipe after going to the toilet. And vulval sensation is just an awareness of how the outside of your vagina feels at different times in your cycle. These symptoms are part of a method called fertility awareness, which lets you accurately identify your fertile window each month. If you've watched my other videos, you'll know that I'm a huge fan of fertility awareness and tracking cervical fluid changes, because once you know what you're doing, it's just so easy to find your fertile days, and in my opinion, far less stressful and a lot cheaper than repeatedly testing with ovulation tests. Basically, the more fertile your cervical fluid and sensation are on a given day, the higher your chances of getting pregnant. In fact, one study found that the chances of getting pregnant from intercourse on a day with the most fertile cervical fluid are 100 times higher than on a day with no cervical fluid. And another study showed that the type of cervical fluid you see is actually a better predictor of your pregnancy chances than how close you are to ovulation when you have sex. So, as well as indicating the beginning and end of your fertile window, cervical fluid can also tell you the days you're most likely to get pregnant within that window. So for me, it's a no-brainer, and there are numerous scientific studies that recommend cervical fluid as a free and highly effective tool to pinpoint your fertile days. If you're interested in trying this method and you want to learn the basics of tracking your cervical fluid, I discuss it in my Secrets of Baby Making Sex Fertility Guide, which I'll link to below. Now, you might have noticed that I haven't mentioned temperature as a way to figure out your fertile days. BBT, or basal body temperature, is another really valuable fertility sign that's used in fertility awareness. It confirms if you ovulated and when you ovulated, but only after it's already happened. It's a retrospective sign. Your BBT doesn't tell you in advance when you're fertile and when you're about to release your egg. But it is a really good idea to use it, because it's possible to get a positive ovulation test or see fertile cervical fluid without actually ovulating. So it's nice to be able to confirm that you did ovulate by using your BBT. Okay, if you're still with me, that's awesome. I know we've covered a lot. Let's recap. Your fertile window is a maximum of 6 days long, made up of the 5 days before ovulation day plus the day of ovulation itself. But the most fertile days, the days when intercourse gives the highest chance of pregnancy, are typically the 2 to 3 days before ovulation day. And to find these most fertile days, the best methods, in my opinion, are tracking cervical fluid and using OPKs or fertility monitors that measure both luteinizing hormone and estrogen. And again, I'll put some resources to help you with this in the description below. In the meantime, if you'd rather not use these methods and prefer a simple calculation instead, then as I promised at the beginning of this video, there is a reliable formula you can use. The purpose of this calculation is to estimate all your potentially fertile days. It takes into account both your cycle length and that variation in luteal phase lengths that we talked about earlier. So that makes it much more accurate than the predictions you're likely to get from a generic fertility app. It won't pinpoint your exact fertile days like OPKs or cervical fluid can, but it will give you your earliest possible fertile day and your latest possible fertile day based on your individual cycle. That way you can time intimacy for the days in between, knowing that your entire fertile window should definitely fall somewhere within that range. Bear in mind, it will give you a much wider range of days though, which means you'll need to have regular intercourse over a longer stretch of time, and that may or may not work for you and your partner. If you'd like to use this calculation, I've made it into a free PDF guide that you can download, so you don't have to keep coming back to this video if you want to refer to it again later. And again, I'll link to that below. And if you want to understand where these numbers come from and see an example of how to apply this calculation, I walk you through the process step by step in another shorter video, which I'll also link to below. Okay, that wraps up today's video. If you found it helpful, if you learned something along the way, please give it a big thumbs up, give it a like, and let me know your thoughts in the comments or ask me any questions you might have. And of course, if you'd like to see more videos like this one, make sure to subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again in another video soon. Bye for now.